Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with Carl Forehand, and we have Stuart Delony with us. Yay! I'm never in on your other podcast that you do with Stuart and our one and only son. So
You're our biggest fan.
I love your other podcast. Like, no joke. I love it. You guys do such a good job. But I get to be a part of this one, so I'm excited about that. Anything you want to say before you get the ball rolling with Stuart?
Yeah, I think Stuart's become a pretty good friend of mine. We hang out once a month and record for the Unlearning Curve podcast with my son from Taiwan. It's at an odd time, and we record for 3 or 4 hours, make a few episodes, and I look forward to that every month. So we know Stuart from the Snarky Faith podcast, and also is writing by the same name. But now he's got a book, so we wanted to talk to him. We wanted to just see where the conversation goes, and you never know that. And I hope
it goes off the rails. That's what I'm hoping.
And it's freezing back in this back room in the corner with 2 windows in a 100-year-old house. So,
but anyway, welcome to the podcast, Stuart.
Well, thanks for having me on here. It's good. It's good.
After we finish complaining about everything, welcome.
No, it's fine. I like it, Carl. I mean, that touched me, Carl. That makes me know that we're going like podcast steady now. Is that like where we're at relationship wise?
I think so. Something like that.
I should be jealous.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Stuart, we like stories. We like hearing people's stories. We're going to hear another one in a couple hours. So, but we just tell your story in whatever way you want to tell it or how much detail you want. And then we're going to talk about the book and we see where the conversation goes. But let's start with that.
For both of you, and I know you guys well enough too, feel free to ask questions as I run through this, because oftentimes when people ask me, like, tell me your story, tell me how you got to us, my brain explodes because I'm like, what do I talk about? Especially with different audiences. So, let's see. Carl and I first met when I think it was my first year in prison. Carl, I think you'd been there for a little while. Not mine,
right?
It was. They it was. You were known as like Carl the Shib, and I just knew that I knew. No, sorry, my story.
Carl the
I'm an ex-pastor, and had spent 20 plus years in the ministry, only to be able to walk away from that as my faith continued to change and evolve, and the church didn't seem to be able to hold space for me anymore. Or really want for me to be around anymore. That's kind of like where I'm at. How I got there, I was raised like a lot of folks were. I'm in a conservative home. I was at church every time the church doors were open, and it was the kind of thing to where, my dad was he was always the chairman of deacons at whatever church we were at. We were always there, and it was a huge part of our life. When I was 3, my sister was born, and she was severely physically and developmentally disabled. And during that time period, then my mom, her answer was, because this is around the time like where televangelists started coming out, Jim Baker, all those folks. And so her answer was, well, the only way we're going to fix this is we went down that Pentecostal charismatic route. So I'd go to church with my dad on Sundays, but oftentimes during the week, I was with my mom at different tent revival meetings, always searching for the golden sprinkles from heaven to be able to fix all of our problems. I had asthma as a kid. I remember my mom would even take me to one where I got shoved up on the stage with Oral Roberts for one of those grab you by the head and shove you backwards meetings. But I was like 6, and in the way that my parents raised me, oftentimes they'd never explained anything very well. So my mom just shoves me in a line and I don't know what's happening. I don't know any of this culture. And so the next thing I'm on stage and they like hand like, and it's like, all right, young man, you're the spirit of asthma, get out. And I don't know what to do. So he like grabs my head and pushes me and I kind of step back and I'm just standing there and then get out second time. And I'm just like, I didn't know what was happening too. And then eventually like they did the third one and the guy kind of pulls me back. Like they had like the guy pull me back and then marches me off stage. So from a very, very early age, I was around different facets of Christianity that either one was pushing certainty. And kind of being pulled between those two places, I ended up kind of getting a pretty good nose for BS in the church and manipulation and all of that kind of stuff. So I was a weird kid that took the Bible and God seriously, but not like in a Bible thumper way. I was just kind of intellectually like, okay, this is what Jesus says. This is what I need to do. I need to follow this kind of stuff. And so I was the annoying kid in Sunday school that the teachers didn't like answering questions. Not because I was being an ass, just because I was generally curious. Like, if this is like what you've told me the universe is, yes, let's discover this.
Yeah.
And so I was a kid that I was fascinated with it. If this is the secrets of the universe, I wanted to know it. And I pursued that. But I oftentimes didn't really find it in church. I ended up finding people would get mad at me when I was younger for asking questions. And so I ended up doing what I do, get married, go to college, graduate, start our life. That was out of order. I went to college, got married, then started life, but had worked for 2 years and still kind of wanted to take the words of Jesus seriously. And then was in a period where I was doing that and reading and studying, and then really felt called into ministry, which pulled me in because because I'm a fool that ends up being very purist in my thoughts of things. And I was like, I feel God calling me. I feel this guy, like that our church was sending off someone to be able to go plant a church. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go help this guy. I feel called to it. We ended up moving across town. I worked there for 2 years, unpaid. Had ended up quitting my job. My wife still worked, but I was like, this is what God tells me to do. Drop your things, do this. And so worked for a little while. Then as that church plan eventually failed, after a couple of years, I got a job on the West Coast for a larger church where I was a Pacific Northwest, probably mega church size, which is different than it is in the other areas of the country, but got hired as a youth pastor there. Then that's when the fun started, because when I was there, I was a youth pastor. We started growing ministry. But the church didn't like the kind of kids we were bringing into the church. They were the kids that weren't church kids. And our youth ministry exploded. And so did every staff meeting, with people being angry at me. And I was a person that would just be like, no, like they should be here. No. Which eventually led to me at a young age of being, I think I was late 20s, idealistic, such a smart man in my marriage. Just eventually told the pastor, I was like, well, if you really believe what you believe, you just need to grow a pair and fire me. So we did. And so this is something we moved across country. I had I had 2 kids. My wife is pregnant. All for the Lord. I was idealistic and stupid. Then from there became a missionary. And we did, it was like home missions around that area, doing evangelistic outreach. In that organization, my area ended up focusing on at-risk kids because I love people the church didn't want. And I worked there for a while, became on their leadership board, and started realizing that I was pissing them off just by asking questions they didn't like. And for a while, you feel good about that. And then after a while, you start to realize, no, they just don't want you here anymore. They just don't want to tell you. Because you start, because if evangelism is very simply just, you do this, and you're out of hell. What is that? What are we inviting them into? Is the gospel not larger? And that eventually led me back to a place where I had, around that time, I was finishing seminary too. And a friend of mine had sent my resume to a church planning organization. And they reached out to me that I didn't know that they had my information. And they're like, we think you're right for us. We want you to plant a church back on the East Coast. And I was like, yeah, no. And with church planning organizations, oftentimes they're so used to people wanting you like they're coming after them constantly. And I was a guy who knew how to raise money, so it became something where that me telling them no made them so horny for me. And they just kept saying, they kept contacting me, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. And eventually it's like, okay. And then so we moved back onto the East Coast where we've been. I've been in Chapel Hill, North Carolina for over 10 years, where we did something that was kind of like church, but not really, for a number of years in bars with folks of all faiths. And we would just sit and talk. And then COVID came and things got weird. And then I decided I want to try to figure out how to do things not church-wise anymore, which leads to one getting defrocked when you have a podcast, when you support LGBTQ folks amongst us in our community, and you also swear and tell the truth. So that's at that point, then lifetime ordination becomes defrocked, and it becomes me just finding my voice more and writing, podcasting, and now a ridiculous book on satire. So that was a mouthful. Over to you guys.
I feel like there's a lot of similarities between your story and Carl's story. That's interesting because I'd never heard your story before. So it's interesting to hear it. I want to kind of go back to like when you were younger and you were saying how you had a sister who was born with some disabilities. And so I want to know what your opinion is on this. Why do you think there is such a fix-it culture in churches? And I think that even goes to the certain youth that you are bringing to your youth group, right? I think it's just interesting because we have a grandson that has disabilities, and people have literally stopped my daughter and said, can I pray for him? Like he needs fixing, right? He needs to be fixed. And I feel like there's such a culture of that in churches.
Really use as a babysitter, or someone to help.
That's me. I'm happy to watch him, but also then it also seems on the other side, the flip side of that coin, it's like you do bring people to the church that we would think would need the church, like troubled teens and what I don't know the kiddos that you're bringing, but then all of a sudden we don't want them, right? That's a lot in that question, so it make sense of it if you can. But
yes, so I've one, the church is uncomfortable with things that doesn't like necessarily involve certainty, and things that doesn't seem to have a simple or easy fix to them. It was like my mom, it was with my sister. We have to just fix it. And for her, and it was like, if we fix her, then she'll be normal and we won't have this issue anymore. And that's some of it comes back to, I think in church circles, is what are we first told? We're sinful, we're broken. Right. And the only way we're going to be whole is with God. And so that's the posture that they always bring us within, as well. We're all broken. And the answer is, well, hopefully we can make you conform and look just like us in the end. And then we'll all not be uncomfortable. But really it comes down to, I think, certainty and messiness in life, and faith, because they want to be able to preach stuff in the Bible to where Jesus says, boop, someone's healed, and boop, they're healed. And we like that. Like that helps our faith. And we want to be able to have those aspects of faith because we want to believe it when it's preached, but we also want to see it when it happens. And there's sometimes it's a disconnect in that. And so I don't know if that really answers the question, but I think that people are uncomfortable with messiness. I think theology in general tries to skirt away from messiness and skirt towards certainty and easy things to fix and push away. And churches, that's the way a Sunday morning works. Everything's about a well-oiled machine, a good production. And there's no space for people's messiness. There's space for their differentness.
Right.
Because my sister wasn't broken.
Right.
Your grandchild's not broken.
No.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be fixed. It's just different.
Right.
And I think that churches don't do well with differences. They want homogeny.
And
which
I feel
ends up being control. They want control.
Right. And I feel like that is, we see that in the church, but it's become part of society. And I don't know if that's because so much of the church has bled over into society. But I mean, I feel like just as a society, we want to fix people. If we see, if I have a student that has autism in my classroom, we've got to make them quote unquote as normal as possible. And I'm like, why? Like, why can't people, like, I agree that we just can't have, mass chaos
Mhm.
everywhere, but can we learn how to accept and live with the differences we have in one another? And honestly, I feel like because of the pull that churches have in society, that that would be a great place to start. But I completely agree with you. I don't think that's they care too much about certainty for that to be something that we see happen, at least
Mhm.
in my lifetime anyway. So
Yeah, I wondered, what did it feel like when
mm,
um, you're that young, we've got to go somewhere to get better,
mm.
your sister and you.
And you, right.
What did that feel like in that position?
In that time, like it's there's like probably what I was feeling like, and then there's like the me that like goes back and looks at the little me, what they were going through at the time, which that was one thing my parents did not explain things. They would just kind of like, oh, we're going here, get dressed. And so
Mhm.
so some of it was just confusion of just kind of going like, okay, what is happening here? What are all these people doing? Even going to
Mhm.
places where like I'd never been around speaking in tongues before, and you're like, what is going on here as a kid? Like
Mhm.
this is sci-fi stuff.
Mm,
And it
Mhm.
is.
mhm.
Um, because it's fantasy. But what was going through my head mainly was probably shame, because you're programmed into this to where, oh, if you have asthma as a kid, it's probably because of sin.
Right.
Like there's something you're not giving up to the Lord. There's
Mm,
something there, or for I probably what my mom was probably trained through televangelists was like, ooh, if your daughter has this disability, what
Maybe
does it
there's
mean about
something.
you?
Yeah.
And the
Maybe
only
there's
way that you
something
can
in your
fix
life.
this is
Yeah.
send us money.
mhm.
Mhm.
That kind I don't know if that answers you, Carl, but I think it was more fear and shame that I
Oh,
would
for
kind of feel
sure.
as like going like, what's wrong with me? Because that was one of the central messages I got from the church in the early ages. There's something wrong with you and you need to fix it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And when you grow up in a situation, especially dysfunctional houses with trauma and dysregulation and things like that, it's easy to go, yes, it is me. Yes, it is. I'm the
Yeah.
problem.
Yep.
It's me.
That's so the problem is there's a narrative and then there's a sales pitch. So there's a narrative and a sales pitch that says, I once was lost, but now I'm found.
Mm-hmm.
You need us to be better. You need us to be right.
Yeah.
Um, we kind of get that high of righteousness from going to church and from being in the right group and all that stuff. And a lot of people, like part of our ministry was to drug druggies, and
Yeah. Like,
motorcycle
yeah.
gangs and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
um, I noticed they would kind of trade their addictions for church addictions, and
Mm-hmm.
they just become just obsessed with church and maybe not work on the intricate issues, kind of like other places. We see that now. But the reason, and you can answer for yourself, but the reason I stayed or was interested in ministry is because I was always thinking, we'll do it differently, right? We'll set up a different thing. We'll meet in a bar, like you said, or something like that. But then I noticed it very slowly just started to morph back into, if it had any success at all, then it became organized and it kind of morphed back into what we did before.
Mm-hmm.
Was that kind of your motivation later in the game when you
Yeah,
became
I
a
think it's
pastor?
one of those things where it was a lesson that I had learned that I didn't necessarily like. I learned it intellectually when I worked for my first the church plant that I'd worked for a few years, because what had happened was this was like a Southern Baptist church plant, but we were trying to be different
Mhm.
and edgy, whatever
Yeah,
that meant back in the early 2000s.
Hmm.
yeah.
But we were trying to be like, we're not like this, we're not like this, we're not like this. And so we started attracting folks doing that we were different and the language and things were different. But what I also began to realize in those situations were that people were attracted to by hurt, to what we were saying, we're not this. But one of the biggest problems was that we weren't saying what we were. And so when there's that vacuum between saying like, I'm not this, or this is bad, people are like, yeah, I don't like that too. But when they start coming and being around it, they'll start being like, but you mean this, right? I mean, they're saying it in their head, but they're not necessarily telling you that. And so they start going along with it. Oh, but this is what we're doing differently, of course, right? And so early on in ministry, I started to realize was, I think sometimes it's easy to gather people by either grievances or things they don't like or things they've been through before, but getting to a place where they can kind of come together as a community and like regulate and like look to do and create and move forward it's very, very different. And I loved how you'd said that, Carl, too. You'd mentioned about working with like bikers and how folks would trade one kind of addiction for the other. And I think I'd noticed that too, because we dealt with kids that were from like abused backgrounds and street kids and stuff. And I think sometimes certainty can feel like stability, but it's not. And I think that sometimes I think folks will be like, oh, I can get the stability. I've moved from something else, but church gives me stability and certainty, but we confuse the two. And I think that leads us into problems as well.
Yeah. My friend calls it the high of righteousness, that we're in the right group, we're in the right place, we're doing the right thing, we're going to get better, and we get kind of crazy about it and want everybody to do it. So they'll be in the right group. Then slowly but surely, you begin to notice things, you begin to kind of open your eyes, and see that it's not that much different, and that there's still issues and there's problems and it's okay. We have all kinds of systems built to skirt around that. I'm wondering also about you wrote something pretty good not long ago about the jester. You are definitely funny. You're a funny person. A lot of people think they are, and a lot of people wish they were. Uh, but I know of two, you and my son and one of my son's friends, that are genuinely funny. And
I am too, but
in her mind, she is funny also.
I laugh at myself all the time. I think I'm hilarious.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to get you off track.
But
I just want to throw that
in your
in
article,
there.
you talked about the purpose of the jester, and can you expand a little bit on that and how you see humor?
I'll do it in a roundabout way. You're mentioning that because one thing people ask me, like, why humor and like why faith and why talk about things of that nature. I think that for me, humor was a coping device early on. It was partially that. I think my humor also connects into the fact that I was like a weird outsider kid, partially because of being raised with odd parents, also having a sister with special needs and stuff, and the way my family was. And you can kind of end up growing like you're an outsider looking in. And so when you can grow up as an outsider, sometimes you end up being someone that observes and notices. And you observe and you notice different things other people do. And so I think combine some of that with
is that because you're hyper vigilant? Is it
some of it? I was gonna say some of it was scanning. And being able to the hypervigilance also probably as a kid taught me I can read people pretty well. And then probably at a certain point it became a defense mechanism because being a scrawny kid with asthma doesn't do a whole lot with like kids in middle school and high school. But if you can observe a person and you can rip them a new one pretty well, especially if you've learned hypervigilance and how to profile and kind of read people and scan people for what their weaknesses are. You can use that for survival skills as well.
Right.
And then eventually I'm like, I don't want to be mean with this. I wasn't a mean kid. I felt like it when I would be mean at times just for survival. My wife was like, you weren't mean. I knew you when you were in high school. But I think some of it, the humor can open us up to things as well. I think sometimes humor can disarm us. I think sometimes humor can be a tool to be able to wrestle with things that are hard to wrestle with in the time. Like right now with politics and religion, things are so they're so polarized. I think sometimes humor can punch through that, like satire and other things. I also think that the world is fucked up and crazy now, and it is a weird time to be alive as a human. And if we can't laugh about it, I'm gonna go crazy.
Right.
And so I think some of that as being a tool to be able to kind of let some of the pressure out of the system. Carl, you're mentioning, I think the article I'd written about like the just like the role of the jester in society, but it's poking humor at those in power.
Poking up, right?
Yeah, punching up.
Punching
And
up,
yeah, so that's it. Yeah, I do. And a lot of the stuff I do on Snarky Faith and other stuff, I will be very sarcastic. Some may say mean at times, but it's always punching up, because that's one of my hearts. Is just the church pisses me off at how much it's a bully, and how much it's an abuser, and how much it takes advantage of people and shoves them down. So, as one who has been on the receiving end of it, I definitely do not mind punching up whenever I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know we want to talk about your book, but I had a question, and it's about your wife, who I don't know, and so feel free to, like, if you don't want to tell any part of her story, I totally
Tell
get
whatever
it.
you want to tell.
She is not here to defend herself, so or to speak her truth.
But
really,
we can have her on as episode 2.
If you want to, beautiful. Yeah, don't worry. She'll tell me if I say it wrong too, and I'll tell you.
But I'm just curious, like with all of in ministry life, how was she affected? I mean, I say that because being a pastor's wife, I don't hear a lot from other pastors' wives. Like, I know what I went through, and sometimes it's not good to commiserate. I don't mean it that way, but it's maybe good to validate, kind of what I went through. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't making stuff up, So I'm just curious, like, when you went into ministry, like, how did she feel about that? How did she feel as things started to change? Or maybe you guys kind of came into ministry with a whole different lens, than like we did. So anyway, I'll let you answer that question.
No, the story. No, there's no like story of me or ministry or anything without Miriam involved in it as well too. I met my wife when I was 16, and kind of became friends, but then kind of had trauma bonds from dysfunctional families as well too. We're both like first children, very kind of analytical in many ways, but also creative or passionate in different ways. And we were always just wanting to understand. Religion became a part of us because I knew if I ever brought a girl home, I knew that she had to be going to church as well too, because I knew my parents wouldn't let that happen. And so I started bringing her to church with me. She'd grown up around church, but her parents had backslidden and hadn't been to church in a few years. But as that is back in the day. So she was very much a part of how I was processing faith and everything with it. How we were processing what is love, what is happiness, what is healthy boundaries, what are healthy family lives, home lives.
Right.
And so she's always very much been like everything's been shotgun running, like partner through the whole process, whether it's just me running shotgun with her or her running shotgun with me. And ministry was a weird one too for her, because she hadn't grown up as ingrained with the Christian culture of bullshit and fear that I had completely. And so ministry was a little different for her stepping into it. I always tried to keep her away from it because I never wanted her to be a pastor's wife. So like as a youth pastor and other things, like I would always just try to, if you want to come hang out, fine. I don't want you to volunteer, because we had younger kids and I didn't want that. The thing I hated about churches was the 2-for-1 special that they like to do as well. And so I was really, really, really wanted to make sure that they didn't do it, because churches be some cheap motherfuckers when it comes to staff that aren't the senior pastors or even senior pastors. But so for her, I think, especially when we moved to the West Coast, it was a big thing. Us moving completely to a different area, to something we hadn't, a different lifestyle that we really didn't understand completely at the time with little kids. She started trying to, I think we've always been deconstructing just by being a question asker and just wanting to understand things better. That I remember, like when we were, it was really rough on her at first, because this one church that we'd moved out to, the larger one, wanted her more involved, and I would fight to push back. And she just started kind of asking questions about what is like a woman's role in ministry, what is her worth? What is her value? Is she just a helper? Is she just this? And we'd found, of all places, we'd found some book someone had given us, and it was for like women in ministry from YWAM, which again, YWAM is, I'm not saying is the most progressive in any regard. But whatever this author is doing, like, really began to speak to her, and like to start to realize that she has as much value as I do. She's just as smart as I am. She's just as capable as I am, if not more capable than I am. And so we started kind of walking through that process also of value, and then questioning systems and patriarchy and those kind of things together. There were times where I feel like she was way ahead of me in the deconstruction process. There was times where I was way ahead of her, and we would wrestle through it together to try to figure these things out. But I always wanted Faith to just be hers, and my ministry or career to not necessarily. I wanted her to have her career, and I wanted her to be able to be involved in ministry if she wanted to, but not. But that also brings with it many issues.
Right.
Yeah. Church is threatening you if your wife isn't here for like the our Christmas Eve service.
Right.
There's going to be issues here. Like, okay, so what is she going to do when she stands here? Oh, just stand in the back in the dark. Yeah, but we still need you.
Or go work in the nursery.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Did that kind of answer
bitter.
what you're asking?
I'm not bitter at all.
No. I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, like I said, I enjoy Stuart's podcast. I enjoy him being on a podcast with me, and I think you do sometimes on and off podcasts with some other people, and you're very in demand and so on. I love that. But I've also come to love your writing. I think you've gone full steam into that recently. I mean, aside from the book that you write on Pathos and so on, and really enjoyed it. So we want to talk a little bit about your book.
Sure.
Tell us kind of how it came about and what it is.
Okay, so the book is called The Tribulation Survival Guide: How to Stay Alive When Everything Else is Dead. And this came about because, well, one thing, it's interesting, Carl, because you and I have discussed this. You mentioned I've been writing a lot more lately, and I began writing a lot more because in a certain weird sense, I felt like I kind of lost my voice, partially through deconstruction. Or it was more through therapy, but more of a deconstructing of myself, to where I knew I have opinions, but podcast was oftentimes where I would just freewheel and just be myself. And so learning to get my training wheels back on to who I was after like loss and trauma and trying to move things out. So writing became kind of an outlet where I could run with ideas and tease them. And this book happened because I was avoiding editing another book that I'm still avoiding editing. For good reason. For good reason.
Book for you. Huh? This is your book.
It was another book I have that is much longer than this book that I was editing.
I have one like that too. Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't who I needed to be yet in that book when I was doing it, because I was being, it's one of the things that I think I learned I understood it in my head, but I don't feel like I know enough of it in my heart enough to like put enough of my personality into it. And so that book led me to procrastination. And it led me to one of my things that you'd mentioned earlier, asking me about where I was, about things like questions I had in church when I was young. I remember when I was 7, and it's Roswell, Georgia. It is in the middle of the summer in a church that did not have very good air conditioning, and we're on a Sunday night, and I hated Sunday night service as a kid because they were long, and the music at our church was worse, which in my mind was never very good on the Sunday morning, and it just was profoundly worse. But they have so much more singing on Sunday night. But I remember my pastor going like, "Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this wonderful? Now think of this. We're going to be singing like this for eternity." And as a 7-year-old, I was going like,
"Oh
no, like, I love you, Jesus, but no." Like, I felt like almost that like was a sin in my heart, which I guess is some of my sarcasm in my own head, like how I've become a person. But it was like true, and I was like going like, "No, God, no, this can't happen. This sounds like hell. Like for me, that would be hell for eternity." But growing up around us, I grew up around cultures of fear, cultures of, there's the satanic panic in the 80s, to where between like televangelists and other things, to where we were worried that there were the signs and wonders happening, or there was a devil around every corner, or if you listen to this music or bought this record, all this stuff was going to corrupt you. And it was all of this stuff to do with fear. And yeah, I started kind of writing this book as just as more of a joke, and then I really got into it as it kept going, and it kind of got deeper and the layers got more. And so this book is a survival guide for those that were left behind, that did not get raptured. And so this is satire, even though the fun part of marketing this so far, and I've done some of it on purpose, it is confusing people on TikTok. This is really funny.
Yeah.
Because people are just like, what, another date? Or they'll ask me, yeah. And I'm just like, oh, okay. It's okay. Folks don't get satire all the time, but this is fun. It's written as if this is completely true, that the tribulation has happened. And I, your author, have received a vision, which is in a certain sense of me parroting the book of Revelation. And so the book is, I was like 10 visions over 10 nights over these different things I saw. But then it goes into the granular where it becomes more just about, okay, so what does this mean? And anything to where heaven is feel of bureaucracy and how to deal with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. How do you accessorize your interiors when you're living in hell? So it kind of goes on that whole thing. So the first part is kind of dealing with after the rapture. Midway through, the kind of tribulation ends, and then we have to start figuring out what are your plans for the next. So it's written kind of in that style. So it's making fun of, subtly and not so subtly, making fun of a lot of Christian culture that we grew up around, but it's doing it with a straight face, and kind of reads pretty straight in many ways, even though it is very absurd. So my goal was to actually have some people that read it and thought it was real. But it's a little absurd for that, but because my wife always worries that people don't understand my sarcasm and think I'm being deadpan.
So that would affect your Amazon ratings, right?
It will.
A bunch of ones.
We will see we'll see what happens as it goes. I don't know.
That's who I get the worst reviews from, are people that thought it was something else and then read it and go, you disagreed with my pastor, so they just want to punish you after that. So you may be able to have fun with some of that.
No, it was fun too, because my publisher was like, well, we're doing like they have like that little metadata at the beginning of a book which says like the publisher, the date, and all this, and like, which version of the Bible were you using for this? And I sat and I was going, and I actually had to think for a minute, and then I actually did a search like through my document. I was going, I don't think there is a single ounce of scripture in this, but I want to make sure. And then they're like, wait, there's not? And I was like, no, all those prophecies and stuff, this is made up. It's none of it's real. And it's obviously, I'm not trying to say this is the Bible. It should be pretty obvious to folks that this is not. But it's assumably that I, as a prophet, are giving people all this information.
We do a podcast with JD, our son, who lives in Taiwan, and you can tell when you talk to him that he was, at one time pretty serious about figuring everything out. And he hung around some kids that had been in church all their life, and they were still somewhat normal people, oddly enough. And most of them are still friends with me still. Their parents don't like me, but he read all of those Left Behind books. I guess you were part of that culture also, and you read LaHaye and I don't even remember all the names now. Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins.
Tim LaHaye and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, all of those guys during that time period. Even like, I mean, I mentioned some of those as well too in the book. There's bits of history where we'll talk about the best of the best of
a little bit.
Of those that have made prophecies over all the years and how dumb this is. But growing up around it, I mean, it was a culture of fear. And as we're like out of it and looking back, you're just like, this is the dumbest thing ever. This is kind of like, when you're a kid, you're thinking puppets are real. And then, then once you're like 8 or 9, you're like, puppets aren't real. That's stupid. And so it's kind of, we've grown into this thing of now looking back as adults being like, oh my gosh, what a weird time to be alive.
Yeah. And so we really are in a weird time. And so we look around at Donald Trump and I usually just say the current administration, and everybody knows, but also, we've been through 50 years,
Hmm.
or about 50 years since James Dobson came on the scene. Something like, not exactly, but
Yeah.
about 50 years of them trying to and finally getting control of everything.
Hmm.
And we see it now for what it is. We see the fascism, we see the eugenics, the misogyny, all the things, the racism and everything in it. So when you do that, and Stuart, uh, I recognize you as a person who's probably serious about studying. And I would say for about 30 years, 25, 30 years, I was too. It's not because I didn't study the Bible, it's because I did study the Bible that I deconstructed.
Hmm.
So now you get to this point where you have all of that history and that knowledge. You've seen how the sausage is made. I'm going to ask you a weird question. Say, what's your hope for the world? What are you trying to accomplish? And, what would you say to the average person who goes, well, I need to take my kids somewhere where they learn morals and all that, but they see it too, but they can't give up that high of righteousness. They need to be in the right group. They need to assure that they're doing the right things for their kids. So take all of that and try to make a question out of it.
Okay,
But
so if you're
what do you
looking
want to say? What do you
yeah,
want to do
you
for the
said a bunch
world?
of words that bounced around in my brain. I know, but no, I like how you mentioned that. You'd said something about James Dobson, and then about like people wanting to raise their kids with morals and having that panic. Like I remember that, man. I remember reading
Mhm.
James Dobson books and being terrified, like changing. James Dobson had such fear in us. Like I was afraid if I was changing my son's diaper and if I like wiped him wrong, it was going to somehow like unleash the gay.
Okay.
All of that kind of. It was such
Terrible. Yeah.
ridiculousness. If people are wanting to send their kids to church to teach them morals, I'm sorry, they've
Find a
done studies
different.
on this. They've done studies on this. I think you can look this up. It's called something like the sticker study, where they had tested kids that were raised around religious that had been in religious homes and kids that weren't, and they would put them in situations where here's like 5 stickers for you, and then put another kid in the room that didn't have any. The religious kids were the sticker hoarders. The kids that weren't taught to be assholes.
Mhm.
So yeah, from being in and around church and being a youth pastor for many years, yeah, churches teach kids to be assholes. They teach them to be judgmental assholes. And if you're asking yourself, and this is mean, not you in general, the person, uh, where can I take my kid to teach them morals? You're a parent.
Right.
Do you know you're? I mean, I had, but it drove me crazy in the church. I would have parents be like, my son's, he cursed me out this week. I need you to talk to him about that. And it's just kind of like, you want to be like, and you can't say this, being like, you already missed your opportunity, dude. You missed the opportunity right there to do it. And you
Yeah.
ask me to do it. That isn't going to fix anything. He doesn't respect you and he's not going to. But if you're a parent, sorry, I digress. If you're a parent, think about the type of kid that you want to bring into this world. Think about the things that matter to you. Think about the way the world is now, not idyllically, and try to think how to prepare them well. So you want to try to raise your kid to not be an asshole, to be kind, and to be all of these things. Church doesn't necessarily instill that.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm not saying there's not churches out there that may, but I just feel like that's a real scattershot approach if you're wanting that to happen. I mean, if we look at the history of like the Southern Baptist Church, the Catholic Church, they're better at grooming your kids than teaching them anything morally. I mean, that's kind of the sad fact of it. And I see the news all the time. Pastors getting arrested for, being gross. Was your other question, Carl? You'd ask about like raising kids and the future of the church and what is
Yeah.
my hope for all of these things.
Hope-
I would hope that
for
people can
mankind,
learn
yeah.
to be kind to themselves.
Mhm.
In the midst of this, as we're deconstructing and walking out of things, I think we have to learn to be kind to ourselves. We didn't know any better when we were going through this a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I also think that you have to be. This is going to sound like really unchristian, but be careful with how much grace you give to these kind of old religious circles. And I don't mean like you go and be hateful or mean, but sometimes we give grace by giving presents. And so I think sometimes just realize what situations your presence is not needed in and get out and don't be there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So from all of this, even writing a survival guide, the point of a survival guide is how to survive. Mm-hmm. So I would hope for many people from a lot of this that have been through church, that have been broken and hurted by a lot of this, is this book may help you to be able to laugh about a lot of the stuff we took very seriously, but I feel like it's also, there's hopeful messages in this, pushing out towards telling people that there is more, that we can go out and that we can change things and be better, but it doesn't necessarily need to happen under a steeple for that to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's teaching people, whether they're your neighbor or your kids, don't be a dick. A little empathy goes a long way.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just need to be quiet when other people are being loud.
For sure. Stuart, on our other podcast, a lot of times we get to talking about mental health, about regulating all these new trauma-informed kind of terms and so on. But, I can't speak for you, but for me, the mental health journey of my deconstruction has been the main event, right? It's the thing that really helped, that really kind of fulfilled a lot of promises that evangelicals made to me that they didn't fulfill. But I'm grateful for it, and I still have a long ways to go. Can you talk about what kind of things have happened for you? And it's okay if it's just general, but talk about the importance of mental health and so on.
Yeah. I think the importance of mental health too, and when we're talking about, especially in the church sphere, the one thing I do want to say to everyone, most pastors do not have the adequate education to be a therapist or a counselor.
Right.
So just understand that. Not to you guys, I'm just saying to listeners, because you may get one class, maybe two classes in seminary, and those are really just classes teaching people how to listen. And that does not necessarily give you the tools to be a therapist.
Right.
Some of probably the most dangerous situations I feel like I've been in are like pastors that think they are therapists. Usually they're just narcissists hiding, and that is another way they manipulate and mess with people. So mental health journeys, yes, churches are not always the best place for finding mental health answers. I mean, some of my advice would also be, because I've had friends that have been through deconstruction. I've tried to help them find like good therapists. The odd thing is I don't follow this advice, but it's just by accident. But I would say if you're looking for a good therapist or someone, do not necessarily look for somebody that has a religious background.
Right.
I think look for someone that seems to vibe with you as a good human that you feel like you can listen to. I think a lot of times if you're going to try to take the Bible and cram it into psychotherapy, it's not gonna work well. And it's gonna get weird and it's gonna get messy. Oddly, I have a bishop, but he has a degree. I have a bishop that's actually my therapist, and but I found him through a number of weird means as well too. And he's one of the most spiritually grounded and also the not spiritual person I've ever met, and in a good way. I mean that like in an actually honest way. I think with mental health in the journey, it's one of the hardest things is just shaking the patterns like that. I feel like evangelicalism gave to me as a kid, just growing up, that you're nothing without God. All of these weird paradoxes that they use to keep us in power, that messed me up as a kid, that God is perfect. God makes everything perfect except you. And how for me as a person that grew up, especially around like a house where I think I was the scapegoat for a lot, and I got a lot dumped on me. God was just like my parents, in the way that I was framing it and hearing it, and it was hard, but it also was like, well, okay, I'll try to be less of a piece of shit now, God. I'll try to do better. I'll just try to a couple more lashes, a little more self-flagellation, and I'll eventually get there. And I had to just learn to be kind to myself. And so oftentimes people's versions of God are based off of their parents or some sort of other authority structure system that was handed down. it can get messy and gross and weird, all in the name of God and heaven and glory and Jesus. And it is very far from glory or good. So no, I think one of the harder things I've been learning and still processing and still messing with my own trauma is just learning to trust my gut. I feel like the church told me, like, don't trust your gut. Don't trust it. Don't trust it. Which is also just, for me, it was always illogical. Because I was like, as part of me, I was like, well, God did create us with brains,
right?
And we do go through experiences, and we can learn from those experiences. But no, can't trust what I've learned. Can't trust my gut. God's ways are better than my ways. I just need to pray more.
Read your Bible, pray, and go to church.
God, if they would have, if they would have given, like, I would have loved if churches would have taught like meditation over, like, for the out of
or
prayer.
regulating, or
over
just regulating.
Oh my gosh, that would have been so much more amazing. Like, for spending quiet time instead of just being like either terrified of what's going to happen,
right,
or just guilty and full of shame because I didn't measure up enough today or do this enough today. But yeah, churches shouldn't be trauma factories. It just keep us, keep us like the abused in place and compliant.
And what do you say to, because I've had this said to me before, what do you say to people that say, maybe to you, or maybe if you were to hear this, like, well, I'm really sorry that that's happened to you, but that's not my church.
That's adorable.
I'm going to start saying that. When people say that.
Or if you want to do the Southern version, bless your heart.
It's adorable.
It's adorable. It's like, oh, my church isn't like that. Okay, cool. Yeah, awesome.
But I want to shake people like that, because I'm like.
But I think some of it's knowing, do they really want to? Do you think they're really going to be receptive to it?
Yeah, they're not.
I mean, it's one of those ones where, we were also taught in church all this time, like, well, you don't know what kind of door God could open up in this if you just planted that seed. No, I can read people. I mean, I also understand probability, and I understand this person's just a boastful asshole, and that's what they want to be. God bless him. Go and do it. It's no skin off my back if you just want to go and be that way. That's fine. Just don't go and persecute other people or take away people's rights or privileges and other things like that. Different story. But I mean, my church isn't like that. Sure. I mean, but what I hear in my head is, you just haven't been hurt yet. You're either not that involved, or
you're not paying attention.
Or you're not paying attention, or you don't want to.
Right.
And this is just your community. I mean, I've been a part of churches where I had really, really, really good friends that were a part of the church that had been there before me, saw the abuse that was happening that to me, but it was systemic as well too, how they would treat staff. And it was just kind of like a thing to really, brother, man, you walk through this with me. You saw all of this. You agreed with me. Yeah, but we got a lot of community here. We've got a lot of people we know here.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, it's faux community, and the word you're talking about, I think, is bypassing. It's spiritual bypassing of everything.
But some of it's, just what Jesus tells us, just kick the dust off your sandals and get the hell out of there if you're not wanted. And sometimes that's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Good stuff in there. We could keep going, but you probably it's later where you're at, and you may want to get back to whatever you were doing. And as we found out, we'll both eventually have to pee. So
okay, yeah.
We won't tell anybody that we paused in the middle. Of this one.
Yeah, let's not.
I appreciate the we here, that you're bringing the we into the wee, but
just trying to make you feel
good. So yes, you're mentioning too. I know Carl's landing the plane here. So the book Tribulation Survival Guide, where How to Stay Alive When Everything Else Is Dead, is available on Amazon on January the 13th of 2026. The end is coming soon. You should get the book for it. Prepare.
Yeah. So you're involved with so many different things, but where can people find you? And tell us what podcasts you are involved in. You've got your own.
I'm only on Snarky Faith and The Unlearning Curve. Okay. I get roped in to hang out on other podcasts here and there, but not on any other podcast.
That's okay.
Someday I'll be up to 3, maybe. I don't know. No, I don't want to. And if you want to look for me, it's easier than spelling my last name, Delony, or even my first name, because people can rarely spell that correctly either. Just look up Snarky Faith. Those are 2 easy words. pretty much own that on the internet. So you can find my website and it'll point you to anything else you want to find out. Yeah. I'm on Pathos Writing, and say hi.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm glad I got to be a part of this podcast. I was telling Stuart before we got started that I don't get on the unlearning curve because I don't want to be the Yoko Ono. I don't want to bring y'all down.
We let you feel like that because we're really just, it's still the patriarchy, baby. We can't, we're basically Theo bros. We just sit
There
here and
you
talk about
go.
man stuff and about what only men can do.
That's right.
Yeah. Which is pause podcast to take a leak in the middle of it. That's all that men are good
That's
for.
right.
Stuart, I want to thank you for visiting us today.
Absolutely.
And anytime you just want to call us, we can have a conversation like this without having to record it. But like I said, I also enjoy the hours we spend each month.
He's giddy. He's almost giddy
I know.
Okay.
I really
when it's time
look forward to it. And
when it's time for you guys to record.
whenever I say something like I'm excited, people say, "Oh, well, I can't tell that you're excited," because I have my mannerism and I look down when I talk. I've tried to make it better, but it just
called
makes
pride.
me look awkward.
It's
Yeah.
ego and pride, Carl.
Yeah,
That's what it
I
is.
know. I'm gonna go to Sunday night church if they had it yet next door.
You'd be going by yourself.
Pray over me and heal me. I want to thank the listeners out there for tuning in also. And we thank Stuart for being here with us anytime. And as always, we want to remind you to be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.